Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost of the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. Without further ado, returning to The Invisible Man as read by Lord Naren White. About 4 o'clock, a stranger entered the village from the direction of the downs. He was a short, stout person in an extraordinarily shabby top hat, and he appeared to be very much out of breath. His cheeks were alternately limp and tightly puffed. His mottled face was apprehensive, and he moved with a sort of reluctant alacrity. He turned the corner of the church and directed his way to the Coach and Horses. Among others, old Fletcher remembered seeing him, and indeed the old gentleman was so struck by his peculiar agitation that he inadvertently allowed a quantity of whitewash to run down the brush into the sleeve of his coat while regarding him. This stranger, to the perceptions of the proprietor of the Coconut Shy, appeared to be talking to himself, and Mr. Huckster remarked the same thing. He stopped at the foot of the Coach and Horses steps and, according to Mr. Huckster, appeared to undergo a severe internal struggle before he could induce himself to enter the house. Finally, he marched up the steps and was seen by Mr. Huckster to turn to the left and open the door of the parlor. Mr. Huckster heard voices from within the room and from the bar appraising the man of his air. "That room's private," said Hall, and the stranger shut the door clumsily and went into the bar. In the course of a few minutes he reappeared, wiping his lips with the back of his hand, with an air of quiet satisfaction that somehow impressed Mr. Huckster as assumed. He stood looking about him for some moments, and then Mr. Huckster saw him walk in an oddly furtive manner towards the gates of the yard upon which the parlor window opened. The stranger, after some hesitation, leaned against one of the gate posts, produced a short clay pipe, and prepared to fill it. His fingers trembled while doing so. He lit it clumsily, and folding his arms, began to smoke in a languid attitude, an attitude which his occasional glances up the yard altogether belied. All this Mr. Huckster saw over the canisters of the tobacco window, and the singularity of the man's behavior prompted him to maintain his observation. Presently, the stranger stood up abruptly and put his pipe in his pocket. Then he vanished into the yard. Forthwith, Mr. Huckster, conceiving he was witness of some petty larceny, leapt round his corner and ran out into the road to intercept the thief. As he did so, Mr. Marvel reappeared, his hat askew, a big bundle in a blue tablecloth in one hand, and 3 books tied together. As it proved afterwards with the vicar's braces in the other, directly he saw Huckster, he gave a sort of gasp, and turning sharply to the left, began to run. "Stop, thief!" cried Huckster, and set off after him. Mr. Huckster's sensations were vivid but brief. He saw the man just before him, and spurting briskly for the church corner and the hill road, he saw the village flags and festivities beyond, and a face or so turned towards him. He bawled, "Stop!" again. He had hardly gone 10 strides before his shin was caught in some mysterious fashion, and he was no longer running, but flying with inconceivable rapidity through the air. He saw the ground suddenly close to his face. The world seemed to splash into a million whirling specks of light, and subsequent proceedings interested him no more. Chapter 11. In the Coach and Horses. now in order clearly to understand what had happened in the inn, it is necessary to go back to the moment when Mr. Marvel first came into view of Mr. Huxter's window. At that precise moment, Mr. Cuss and Mr. Bunting were in the parlor. They were seriously investigating the strange occurrences of the morning, and were, with Mr. Hall's permission, making a thorough examination of the invisible man's belongings. Jaffers had partially recovered from his fall, and had gone home in the charge of his sympathetic friends. The stranger's scattered garments had been removed by Mrs. Hall, and the room tidied up. And on the table under the window, where the stranger had been wont to work, Cuss had hit almost at once on 3 big books in manuscript labeled Diary. Diary, said Cuss, putting the 3 books on the table. Now, at any rate, we shall learn something. The vicar stood with his hands on the table. Diary, repeated Cuss, sitting down, putting 2 volumes to support the third and opening it. No name on the flyleaf. Bother. Cipher and figures. The vicar came around to look over his shoulder. Cuss turned the pages over with a face suddenly disappointed. Dear me, it's all cipher. Bunting? There are no diagrams, asked Bunting. No illustrations throwing light? See for yourself, said Mr. Cuss. Some of it's mathematical, and some of it's Russian, or some language, to judge by the letters, and some of it's Greek. Now the Greek, I thought you... Of course, said Mr. Bunting, taking out and wiping his spectacles, and feeling suddenly very uncomfortable, for he had no Greek left in his mind worth talking about. Yes, the Greek, of course, may furnish a clue. I'll find you a place. I'd rather glance through the volumes first, said Mr. Bunting, still wiping. A general impression first, Cuss, and then, you know, we can go looking for clues. He coughed, put on his glasses, arranged them fastidiously, coughed again, and wished something would happen to avert the seemingly inevitable exposure. Then he took the volume Cuss handed him in a leisurely manner, and then something did happen. The door opened suddenly. Both gentlemen started violently, looked round, and were relieved to see a sporadically rosy face beneath a furry silk hat. Tap? Asked the face, and stood staring. No, said both gentlemen at once. Over the other side, my man, said Mr. Bunting, and please shut that door, said Mr. Cuss irritably. All right, said the intruder, as it seemed in a low voice, curiously different from the huskiness of its first inquiry. Right you are, said the intruder in the former voice. Stand clear, and he vanished and closed the door. A sailor, I should judge, said Mr. Bunting. Amusing fellows they are. Stand clear, indeed. A nautical term referring to his getting back out of the room, I suppose. I dare say so, said Cuss. My nerves are all loose today. It quite made me jump, the door opening like that. Mr. Bunting smiled as if he had not jumped. And now, he said with a sigh, these books. Someone sniffed as he did so. One thing is indisputable, said Bunting, drawing up a chair next to that of Cuss. There certainly have been very strange things happen in Ipping during the last few days. Very strange. I cannot, of course, believe in this absurd invisibility story. It's incredible, said Cuss. Incredible. But the fact remains that I certainly saw right down his sleeve. But did you? Are you sure? Suppose a mirror, for instance. Hallucinations are so easily produced. I don't know if you've ever seen a really good conjurer. I won't argue again, said Cuss. We've thrashed that out, Bunting. And just now there's these books. Ah, here's some of what I take to be Greek. Greek letters, certainly. We'll go ahead and stop there for today. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.